What's going on today, YouTube? So today what we're going to be doing is adding MySQL-driver to our Golang application that we've been working on. So we're going to start off here on the official go-sql-driver GitHub repository. This repository is a little confusing for a complete beginner, but hopefully this video will help you guys out and just kind of speed up the process of getting everything set up. But really everything you need is in here. You just got to look for it. Also, something that is really helpful in this documentation would be all the way at the top. If you go over to Wiki, there are some examples on how to set up not only a connection, but to prepare and execute statements inside of your application. But this is not a production based. It's not a production ready way to implement this into your project. So what I'm going to do today is introduce you to how to set it up in your project in a more real world application scenario. So let's just get right into it. So if you guys remember, we have this start server application where we set up our initial database connection. So far, right now we're using Cassandra and the go-sql-driver library. And what we're going to want to do here is just replace it with a new repository. By the way, I'm doing this. I'm going to add a little bit of error handling just to make your life a whole lot easier, because it is a pain in the butt when you don't really know what's going on. Even though it says it's compiling and everything in your terminal, but you're actually having some errors. So I'm going to show you guys how to print that out pretty effectively. So essentially, we're gonna want to create a new file inside of our database package, and we're gonna call it setup MySQL connection, right? So let's go ahead and go and create that file. Right now that says database connection. Let's do MySQL-database connection.go. Let's go in here, make it a part of the database package. And the first thing we're going to want to do is declare it's the same idea as our what we did for Cassandra. We're going to declare some sort of struct, which is going to house our database driver and connection, basically where we actually execute queries and whatnot. And we're going to use that throughout all of our functions that we declare in here. So let's go ahead and declare that struct. We'll do, storage, sure, struct. And now if you want to look at the documentation, it says you want to declare this SQL.open variable, this DB variable to this SQL.open statement. And if you look, whenever you type it out, it actually is supposed to return a type of SQL.db. Oops. SQL.db. Yep. And we'll do func. What do we name it? Setup MySQL connection. Let's just call it setup storage. Make things simpler. Setup storage. going to be a void function. Oh, I lied. It's actually going to return the struct and an error. And in here, we're going to want to declare that same variable that the documentation tells you to, SQL.open MySQL. We're just choosing the type of driver and everything. Root, Tor, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then slash YouTube go_db. Also, if you don't have MySQL Workbench installed, you totally should. It's extremely helpful. So this is what I had already while I was setting this video up. But yeah, so you download MySQL Workbench, you set up a new connection, give it a username and a password, and yeah, you should see whatever schema or database that you created over here in the schemas tab. And right now, I'm just going to go ahead and delete everything that I have in here because we are creating it from scratch. Oh, shoot. Actually, I don't think we are, but whatever. I guess we're just going to create it from scratch. Okay, so what I did here is you put in the connection name and then the connection password, and then make sure you have that @ sign, and then @ right after the password, followed by the schema that you want to connect to. And that will be in this DB variable here. So after we do that, we're going to do this if error statement. So here we're declaring two variables. One's database, one's error. Here we're checking to see if the error is nil, so if nothing went wrong. If nothing went wrong, we want to return nil and error here. And if something went wrong, we want to return nil and error. But if nothing went wrong, we want to return the storage DB type DB. Oh yeah, and error as nil. There we go. And now that we have this set up storage, let's handle this error here. If error does not equal nil, let's just print that out. Nothing too crazy. So we set up our database connection. We're passing it back through our router and into our users.service. And this is complaining because right now we have our database set to the Cassandra database. So our service is actually, the interface isn't matching what's currently inside of the Cassandra database. So let me rename this too to make things a little bit more clear. Yeah, Cassandra database and MySQL. So as you can see, we have setup DB connection here and execute query here, which match the signature for this repository interface. It has to have an execute query here with these parameters and this return type. And we don't have that for the MySQL. So instead of copying this execute query, which I totally could do, I'm gonna add something a little more useful in our case, which would be a save user function. So this storage type is going to have a receiver called save user with users.user as a parameter, and it's going to return an error. And here is where the fun part begins. We're going to have to declare a statement, s.db. I think it's prepare. And here, insert into, we're gonna make a table called users, and we're gonna pass in the values. First name, what is users right now? First name, last name, and email. Right. So first name, last name, email. And then we could even specify the fields here if we wanted to. First name, last name, and email. Sure. And then after we prepare this statement, we want to check the error. If error does not equal nil, return error. Simple as that. And then down here, we're going to do, let's get the result actually. Result and error again. We're going to do statement dot execute. And then here we pass in the three values that we want here. In this case, we have user, so let's pass in the user dot, u dot first name, u dot last name, and u dot email. And then for the heck of it, let's see what's returned here. What is r dot? Oh wait. Yeah, let's do this. And then r dot last inserted ID. Sure. And then just return nil. After we do another error check. What's it complaining about here? Let's see. Yeah, whatever. For now, that's fine. Let me just double check all of this. Oh, we also want to pass in the ID. I forgot about that. And then for the ID, you can pass in either nil or 0. I like passing in nil, but do what you want. And what this basically means is that if you have it set up in your database, it's going to automatically increment the ID, the primary key, by 1. So yeah, that's what we're going to do with that. So now that we added this save user, let's go ahead and function, and let's go ahead and just copy this receiver signature and go into our router, go into our user service, and then replace this here with that new signature. And we don't need this because we're now in the users package. And we can comment this out completely, since that was the Cassandra function. I'll even comment that. Cassandra db add user function. Just a quick note. I kind of like that. Add like 3 stars. Okay, so now I don't even really like add user. I want to rename that to the same thing here. Let's just call it save user. And just to keep things simple, we're not going to deal with pointers today. All right, so func, let's make a receiver for the service called the exact same thing, save user, takes in user and error. And what do we want to do here? Oh yeah, we want to call the actual, we want to call the repository. So we have s.r.save-user, pass in the user, and you know what? We actually need to do an error check here too. If error equals that, error does not equal nil, just return error, and if not, return nil. Cool. And our handler, we should change this to save user since we just renamed it, and we are no longer passing in a pointer. So yeah, so we go in here whenever our request comes into this post handler. Let me go back to the router to show you the workflow. So right now we have an endpoint called API/users, and whenever you hit this endpoint, it goes and uses these routes here inside the user's router, and inside of this mounted route is two endpoints. One's get user and the other one's update user, and each one has its own handlers, on the handler functions. The one we're focusing on right now is this post handler. So if we go in here, users handler.go, post handler, this is what's going on. You're hitting the endpoint, it's getting the request, or the body of the request, decoding it to our user object, and then calling our service to save this user to our database. And if there's an error that happens on this level, we're going to respond with an error to the user. So they'll get that back. And if everything's successful, they'll just get, you just added user 1 to the MySQL database. I commented this out, by the way, before I started recording. So yeah, so that is the workflow. Let's go ahead and set up our database table. Sorry if this is out of focus here. Just click here, create table. Let's call it users. Column, what was it? First name, not int. That would be bad. Varchar of, I don't know, 15. That's fine. That is not the primary key. Not null. Let's do an ID, sure, and that will be of int, and that'll be the primary key and not null. And let me move this up there, and then last name, Varchar 45. we can't have 115 and 145. Let's just do both 45. And then email, and I don't want any of these to be null, so auto increment ID, yes. All of these check marks are also shown here. Let me move this up a little bit. And yeah, there it is. So you apply ID, first name, last name, email, primary key ID, int, not null auto increment. All right, everything looks good here on this end. Let's close that. Take a look at our table. Let's go back to the query. Select all from users. As you can see, there's nothing currently in our database. And this isn't running yet, but we're eventually going to make a post request to this update user endpoint. So seems like everything's good to go. Let's go ahead and start our application. We'll allow. Hope you guys can see this code, by the way. Just zoomed in a little bit more for you. So it seems like everything's up and running. Let's go ahead and hit our endpoint. We should have gotten a response. Could not get response. Why not? Localhost 8080 API users update user. Is that? Uh-oh. See, this is why we log our errors. Invalid memory address, no pointer. Turns that. Save user, router, update service. So /update user, and then here. I think the issue might be in the handler. We're passing in a regular user. Maybe that had something to do with it. But it would have printed that out. Oh, unknown driver. Okay, I've ran into this issue before. We actually have to import, go back to the docs and import this line. I forgot to mention something. This was a pain in the butt whenever I was trying to get all this stuff set up. And you guys are lucky that you have someone like me to make these sorts of videos, which would be great, by the way, if you could like and subscribe so you don't have to run into issues like this. So something went wrong. Oh, wait. Why did it say something went wrong? That was in our handler. If error does not equal nil, something went wrong. Did something go wrong though? Last name, email, first name, last name, email. Yeah, seems like something went wrong here. Add user, save user, repository, save user, insert into users. Debugging this on the go. Values. Oh my gosh, I forgot a question mark. All right. So now things should work. And it shouldn't say that. I should add a return statement in that handler just in case. So whenever this is done, I just want to return. So that way it won't go on to the next line. It'll just return this here and not all that. So yeah, let's rerun this. I hope that made sense. So the reason why it said you just added user 1 is because if you think about it, this code ran, this came back wrong, and it responded to the user, something went wrong, and then it continued on to the next line and said it just added user to the database, and then sent something back to the user again saying that everything was successful. And we don't want that. We want to add this return statement here, and just so it can end the code right there and not move on to the next line. So now if we go back and hit the endpoint, it should work. There we go. Okay, so we added first name. Well, actually, yeah, that's right. That should be right. Yeah, and there you go. So we have first name, last name, email. And again, since I added that auto increment, I can hit this as many times as I want. I'm hitting Command Enter, by the way. You can, do all that. But yeah, so auto increment adds whatever you hit there to the database with a new primary key. So yeah, that's really it. That's how you integrate MySQL into your Golang application. I hope you guys liked the video. I had some stuff printed out here, but yeah, just for a quick roundup, and just so you guys, I can make sure that you guys really understand what we did, was I'm just going to run through everything again. So what we did was create this file called MySQL database, and it just replaced our Cassandra connection. Sorry, doing 3 things at once is not my strong suit. Okay, so yeah, we created this new setup connection function that returns this storage type, and we're calling that inside of our router.go file. And this storage type, remember, storage struct is this, has this database SQL.database pointer. So if we go in here, we're really just passing that database in connection to our user's service right here. And inside of our service right here, we're declaring a new service, which is basically just setting our service repository. So whenever we call the service, we can call s.r and access that same exact repository, or in our case, database connection. And in this case, it's MySQL, not Cassandra. And call any function within that database connection. So here we have s.r.saveUser. So S is of type service here, which has an R type in it, or variable in it, and you can access that. And then that R has a save user function. It's a little confusing because I named them both save user, but honestly, this makes the most sense to me, because you're not you are adding stuff, but what you're doing is saving, and it doesn't make sense to name the service add user, the function inside the service add user, and then the function inside the repository save user. So in this case, they're both save user. But yeah, you're passing in the user here, and it's going back to this function, setting up or preparing this SQL insert statement to your already created database table, and passing in the values here. And this nil, remember, allows you to auto increment your primary key. In our case, it's this ID field here inside the users table. So that way you don't have to pass in your own custom generated ID. And then we have some basic error handling here, and we're actually printing the last inserted ID whenever we add it. Right now it's saving as a memory address. Last inserted r dot. Yeah, so that's really it. You save it to the database, you return nil as an error, and it goes back to your service. Error is nil, so it returns nil here again. It goes to your handler, and we're just working backwards here. So, and then this error here is nil. So it moves on to the next line. It just added user to database. And then it sends this back to the user. And there you go. That's how you implement MySQL database to a Golang application. I know some of you have been requesting a link to the repository for this code. I have not made that yet, but I will. You know, working as a software engineer and doing YouTube and working on my own projects is a lot. So I'd really appreciate if you guys would like and subscribe, so I can keep this content coming and making more videos for everybody. So yeah, that's really it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.